Yeah, well, I think when it comes to pride, it's important to not fall prey to the sin itself. Usually that was a sin in like religious theology that was connected with Lucifer when he basically was trying to become God. That eventually ended up being his demise.
There's a reason why the good book says that the love of money is the root of all evil. It doesn't say that money is, but it's the love of it. When your sense of self and your sense of value is based on what it is that you have, it's a natural thought to acquire more, to feel better, to feel bigger.
With greed, it's essentially a segue into gluttony. When you eat or when you're making that money, there's a certain limit when you don't need it anymore, right? It's just the want.
Hello, and welcome to the Enlightened Awakening Podcast.
A place of honest and authentic conversations.
I'm your host, Timmy.
And I'm Uriel.
And today we've got a very special guest with us. Special guest, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Shadi Osman.
There we go.
That's about all I got with that one.
There you go, the man, the myth, the legend. Shadi is somebody that Uriel and I also know from our work in mental health. And of course, he's in a bit of a different spot than we are. But ultimately, we're all looking to move towards that same direction of using what it is that we experience in life with that emphasis on ensuring that our mental health is where it needs to be able to achieve self-actualization. And so today, the conversation that we're going to have is going to be a bit different. It's going to be the start of a series that we're going to be doing with Shadi on the 7 deadly sins. Now, for anybody who may not be aware of them, and you guys are going to have to help me out because I know I'm going to forget one. The 7 deadly sins, the concept of it is that there are 7, sins that all humans are susceptible to, but everything else from a theological perspective, because that's where this comes from, all other sins that humans commit come from these 7. So today we're going to be emphasizing on pride and greed, but we also want to give a shout out to the other 5 as well. Lust, gluttony,
sloth, and wrath.
And then there's one we're missing.
That would be
and
the snake, which
greed.
is
That's
envy.
Envy. There we go. I knew it. Thank you. This guy came in clutch. And so the reason we wanted to kind of talk about these sins is that we've noticed in our lives that there's been a lot of different things that have happened, situations we've been a part of, and even maybe things that we've observed in other people that have been eye-openers as to how these sins really can trip you up and limit how far it is that you're able to go. But before we get too into it, true to form, anytime we have a guest, we're going to dive into Let's Get Closer. So, Shadi, where are you feeling? Are you going to dive right into the end? You want to ease into it? How you feeling?
I'm definitely, I love to ease in stuff. I will never jump straight in. So I think we'll go close and then maybe closest to last.
I like
We'll
it.
see
All
how
right,
we're feeling.
go ahead and draw, my man.
Okay, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen something you cannot explain?
That is a good one. Have I seen something that I cannot explain? I'm going to have to think about that one. Uriel, what about you?
There's too many things I've seen that I can't explain.
Okay.
But I don't know how appropriate some of them are to talk about on the podcast.
All right.
But one thing that comes to mind to me is like the whole UFO sighting thing.
Okay.
I like back home when I was in Mexico, like I used to see foreign objects like up in the sky all the time. And I lived in like a pretty rural place. So the sky is often like pretty clear. So I don't know if it was UFOs. I don't know if it's like the government messing with people or somebody with a drone or something. But yeah, if aliens do exist, I can't wait to meet them.
Shout out to the aliens. Shadi, what about you, bro?
That's a difficult question. I don't know. It depends how you partake that. I've seen a lot of stuff that are unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can go the path of that, but I feel like that's something that's so graphic that you don't really want to get into, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably stuff from work or from elsewhere. Yeah.
Well, it goes both ways, right? But like just the workplace we were in, you deal with that on like a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's where my head went. There's been some situations I've witnessed or been a part of as we're providing care to people who are struggling with mental health that I just had one moment in particular, without getting into details, where me And one of the guards that I was working with, we just looked at each other being like, yo, are we really doing this right now? Is this really what is required to keep this person safe and to prevent them from ending their life? And it just seems so extreme, and it makes you question, like, are we actually doing the right thing, right? Because they're yelling that you're hurting them or that you're doing this or you're doing that. And you know for yourself that that's not actually true. But yeah, I just had a moment of clarity, or I guess him and me and the guy I was working with, we both had a moment of clarity where we're like, yo, this is messed. And it sucks that we have to be here. So I'm gonna put it at that. Nice. Go ahead and draw. Oh, you got something else that you wanted to jump into?
No, that's great.
Go ahead.
What is your greatest gift or talent?
Ooh, this time around, they were actually pretty chill. All right.
This kind of aligns with like the whole pride thing now.
Yeah.
'Cause
Okay.
We're about to brag about what we think we're good at.
Yeah. All right. Shadi, you want to go first or you want a second to think?
You're gonna have to give me a second. I don't know. That's a difficult question because you don't want to be conceited or
Yeah.
the whole pride thing going right into
It's
it.
tough, right? And as you said, this is like very apt actually that you drew that one. I'm going to say for myself, I think that one of my greatest gifts, I can't say it's maybe the greatest thing about, well, see, there you go. The greatest thing about myself. That was close. I'd say one of the gifts that I have worked hard to leverage as much as possible is my ability to clearly talk about what it is I believe and why I believe that, and to then act in accordance with what I believe. Years ago, I read this book, and we've mentioned it on this podcast previously, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And he just talked about the fact that when you act in a way that's in accordance with what you believe, you attract people who believe what you believe. And I love that because that's something I had been doing for years. But the flip side of that is that you will repel people who do not believe what you believe, which is something that Sinek doesn't talk about in the book. I'm going to talk about that one day in a book. Y'all can't steal that, yo. That's proprietary to me. But it's interesting to just see how when you consistently behave in a way that is, let me put it like this. When people that don't even like you can tell you what it is that you're about, or they know that, yeah, I may not respect this person, but I at least know what they stand for. That is my goal, where it's like everybody knows who it is that I am, what it is that I'm about, and that in any situation, you can anticipate the way that I'm going to respond based on how I've responded in the past. So it's an interesting thing. Uriel, what about you, man?
I hate having to like highlight things that I think I'm good at. But if I were to pick one, I think my ability to endure hardships and to sort of relentlessly move forward, regardless of what it is that is kind of put in front of me. I've been through a lot. I've grown, and my parents have always taught me that no matter how hard life gets, you sort of look at whatever adversity is coming your way. You look at it in the eyes, and you tell it ain't gonna beat you, and you show up, put your money where your mouth is. You do the work, and then you get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that is kind of lost because we've become so comfortable with, even just like in the Western world, with what we have access to. Our lives are very, very comfortable. So we're not enduring a ton of hardships. And now, on the flip side, things are getting much harder for the newer generations and even our generation as well. And we're about to face a lot of adversity. And I think the adversity that we are currently facing and will be facing is going to play a huge role in the mental health crisis that is ongoing currently worldwide.
It's going to be hard to go after Uriel with that one, but it's a good question, honestly. My best take on it is probably being not necessarily fearless, but being able to conquer fears in the sense of, you know what, I could do it. I'm going to do it. And nobody's going to stop me from what I'm going to do. There's a certain level of confidence you have to really go into obstacles and adversity with. I think that's so important to have that level of confidence to really drive you into it. So I think that's what I have. But sometimes, that pride really gets in the way, and you really have to be able to get humbled and let that humility really kick in.
Yeah, I feel that.
And actually, yeah, that was like literally the perfect segue. But I think that the reason why pride has a tendency to creep up with things like this is that, at least in my case, and tell me what you guys think about it, is that for a long time, I didn't really see that I had any worthwhile qualities about myself. And so when I started understanding that, yeah, there was actually a couple things that were noteworthy about myself, things that actually could benefit other people, that could ultimately allow me to become more of who I truly was, I leaned into that almost too much on the other side. And it became like the center of my identity, right? Where I'm like, because I'm able to achieve and do these things, that's why I have value, right? Not really understanding that it's who I am and whose I am that ultimately provides that value. So it's an interesting transition that you go through, at least when you are able to kind of figure that out, but it's usually a painful process before you get there, right?
On that note, like you're saying, the things you achieved, but to really get to the things you achieved, all those great things about you, you had to use to really get to that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just such a big thing that you're probably missing. You're not recognizing like how great you are on the level that other people will be able to see, right? So
yeah, I appreciate that, man, because the thing is I think often, and that's why you need to have like people like this, right? That are able to be like, yo, you know what? I see this and this and this in you, and I see that is valuable, right? Even if you don't fully see it, just how valuable it is, I see the work that you put it in, right? So I appreciate that, G.
Of course.
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to pride, it's important to not fall prey to the sin itself, right? Because usually that was a sin in like religious theology that was connected with Lucifer when he basically was trying to become God, essentially, right? And that eventually ended up being his demise. But I think when it comes to us and in the world that we currently exist in, we are very self-centered and egocentric. And the ecosystem that is now built that all of us continue to partake in, I shouldn't say all of us, but a majority of people partake in with social media, is really based around that pride. You're showing off yourself, you're showing off your pictures, the way you look. Perhaps you try to work out to look a certain way and then that's something that you become proud of, but it becomes your identity. And then once you lose that, then you start having issues and your identity gets lost. But the way I was raised is that you've got to really narrow down on what it is that you are and who you want to be as a person. And you guys kind of brought it up as well in a different way, but you always should know who you are, and you shouldn't require validation from anybody in your exterior. But when they do recognize it without you having to brag about it or speak loudly about it, I think that truly speaks volumes to the work that you're putting in. But it's like when a kid gets offered a piece of candy, right? Every time you get that validation from outside sources that aren't yourself, you're so tempted to grab a bite. But you've got to kind of stay true to yourself and know that you will only remain who you are as long as you continue to work towards that on a daily basis.
So naturally, the start of the conversation went towards pride. But one of the other things that we wanted to talk about today was greed, right? And so I'll be honest with you guys, greed is not something that I have historically struggled with. And I have tried to understand for a few years why that is. The conclusion that I've come to so far anyways is that I always had an understanding that money was a tool that allowed you to be able to have access to things and to have access to experiences specifically. Where I started becoming cognizant of this was that when we'd have these like extra special field trips that were like, yeah, you know, a little bit more expensive at school than the usual like $10 per person, that then became a pretty significant conversation in the house. Like, are you going to go to this field trip or not? Because we may or may not be able to afford it. So that was where it started for me. And I understood that in my life, money was something that I wanted to have simply so that I would not have not, as backwards as that sounded, right? Really, it was going to be so that I didn't have to consistently run into limits in terms of what it was that I wanted to achieve. And wouldn't have to think about, let's say, going on a field trip and not have to worry about whether or not I could do that, right? Which is like a normal experience. So for myself, I feel that based on those experiences growing up, I have a bit of a different relationship when it comes to financial and physical resources, because ultimately I just want to be able to have so that those around me can benefit and not have to worry. And I don't know about if it's the same with you guys, but no.
No, not at all. I guess my play on that is going to be completely different. Let's look. So greed is defined as intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. So that's just a normal definition. But if you're really to go into it to, I guess, biblical, greed as a sin is excessive desire for material possessions and wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about that, like as a kid, obviously, my family didn't have a ton of money. So growing up, you really want to be able to experience what everybody else had. Because I remember, like in elementary, junior high, everybody else had new kicks every day, like different pairs of jeans, different shirts.
Mm-hmm.
I had my one outfit for like the whole week.
Yeah, that's rough.
Right? So during that time period, you're very like, I don't want to say you're oblivious, but what's the saying for it? It's ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So ignorance is bliss until you're not ignorant anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's going to hit you because especially with social media, it's going to pop up in your face eventually, right? So I think growing up, I started thinking, wow, like I want everything new. I want this, I want that. But like right now, you really get to learn about who you are and why money isn't everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, I'd love to be under a home, somewhere heated, and to be able to purchase anything that's a need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like necessities is all I care for right now. Obviously, wants, if you need something, that's a priority. So I don't know. My greed at a young age, it definitely was so, what's the word for it? I don't even know. Like money was a need for me, even though it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain level that you really have to grow to for money to be like less wanted or less needed, I guess.
We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but all the 7 deadly sins, they're all connected. And a lot of them, if not all of them, kind of go hand in hand and they kind of intertwine. So it's very complex. But when it comes to greed specifically, I think all people are greedy. And the reason why I believe that is that we all aspire to have more material things in this world. Whatever we're born in, whatever opportunities we're born with, we want to surpass that. I think every human being would like to do better for their kids if that's what they want to do, or do better for themselves, or do better for their partners. And so I think to some degree, we're all greedy. Now, how greedy one person to another is vastly different, right? Those that are accumulating wealth, such as the billionaires out there, just for sheer amount of power. Like with a bunch of money comes a lot of power, which goes hand in hand together. But more importantly, beyond that power, it gives you control. And again, everybody wants to have some level of control, right? You want to have your own house so that you don't have to pay rent and maybe be kicked out. You want to be able to have financial freedom so you can control the outcomes of your life better than you would if you didn't have that freedom. I think we all are born to be greedy, but how we manage that and try to play a balance with it will be really important. Because then if you connect greed to pride, if you're a very prideful person and you base your success on your material collection in this world, then you will then turn into a person that will base their ego on that greed of power and material and money. And so it's really interesting, right? Because then you start getting into the religious components of it. And we don't mean to like make it super religious, but I think it's really important to make the connections and Because whether you believe or in anything spiritual or you're an atheist, I think that you can take some of the verses from the Bible and apply them to your life. Because ultimately, in my opinion, religion is about trying to be a person that is righteous with good morals and convictions, that is hopefully trying their best to do good in the world. And so when we were choosing to do the 7 deadly sins, I saw them as like the 7 greatest obstacles impeding our ability to reach self-actualization. For those that don't know what self-actualization is, it's essentially just our ability to reach our full potential. And as we've outlined all of the 7 deadly sins, it starts with pride as the top of the iceberg, and everything else kind of trickles down. So do we want to get back into pride and then go in depth about it? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think pride is probably where you have to set the bar and really just like dig into it.
Yeah, and before we move on to that, I wanted to comment on what you had said about everybody being fundamentally greedy. I think that we are susceptible to falling into that. I think that there is a very natural desire that is evolutionarily driven to acquire more, right? If we think about, like, let's say 10,000 years ago, humans they needed to acquire more in order to be able to survive, right? They had to fight their environment. They had to fight things in their environment to be able to even just survive, right? And where I think that we have a tendency to fall into that is when it comes to excess, like you had mentioned. After you've gotten what you need and what you need for those around you, what's your next move? And to kind of segue into this piece about pride now, I think that there's a reason why the good book says that the love of money is the root of all evil. It doesn't say that money is, but it's the love of it. Because I think it really plays into 3 of these deadly sins: lust, which we'll leave for another day, but then pride and greed as well. Because when, as you had referenced, when your sense of self and your sense of value is based on what it is that you have, it's a natural thought to acquire more, to feel better, to feel bigger, right? And so I think that that's where it does have that tendency to fall into that and where it starts to get dangerous. But for me personally, I have never seen the pursuit of resources and value as being inherently wrong. It depends on what it is that you're exchanging for that. If you're the type of person who's going to prioritize accumulating wealth over spending time with your family, over building genuine relationships, over caring for others, right? And providing for those who don't have, right? Then that is where I see that becomes a problem. But if you are somebody who has very forthright morals, money is no more than a tool, right? And so those who are good and get resources can do more good. But those who are evil, or I shouldn't say those who are evil, those who maybe are still figuring out exactly that part of their life, right? The tendency to fall into things that are going to potentially destroy you and other people, but most importantly, your soul is just waiting for you around the corner.
I was about to say, on that note, like with greed, it's essentially a segue into gluttony, right? Because when you eat or when you're making that money, there's a certain limit when you don't need it anymore, right? Now it's just the want. And with the want, that's where you get the excessive amount that you can give away, right? Which is proper. And that goes hand in hand with anything in our day-to-day life. Like, you want to be able to give back. Don't expect anything back, but you want to be able to give something to someone else and then go on with your day, because eventually it'll come back.
I'm going to challenge your view on this, and you probably are familiar with this verse as well, from Matthew 19:21, which says, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." Right?
That was the rich young ruler, right?
Yeah. So the thing, and I agree with you. Inherently, there isn't anything wrong. But at what point are you satisfied with the amount of resources you've accumulated?
For myself, if I were to answer that question, it would be, and even as I was about to say it, I'm like, yeah, I'm interested to hear what you're going to say. For me, what it is that the resources are at a point where they are self-sustaining, meaning that I no longer need to go out and acquire more resources in order to maintain my lifestyle. So for me, what that would be is, let's say, as an example, finding a way to replace what it is that I make at my job, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I no longer now need to show up because of the moves that I've made. That for me is where I have set that bar at satisfaction. But where it is a slippery slope is when you increase your lifestyle. Okay, you know, maybe 180K a year is good right now, but then you go and get that like next house, that next car. Oh, now I got to go acquire more resources to be able to fund this part. That's where it gets dangerous.
But I'm going to challenge you again. You've set the bar. You've decided that.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make that good or bad. I'm not saying that the bar that you've set is inherently bad or greedy.
Right.
But if you actually look at the basic needs of a human being to survive, the houses that people live in, the amount of money they spend and waste on food, the amount of vehicles they have, the amount of money they spend on vacations, a variety of clothes, we are inherently greedy.
Yes. But I think that the other flip side of it as well is what you can do for others then. Just because you have a nice house or a nice car, what about the other people around you, right?
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
But your actions don't have to be of monetary gain to others.
Not necessarily.
You can be of service to other people and still be of charity without having the money.
Shadi,
And living. Now, hold on one second. Because the amount of time that you put, and again, this is just playing devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
The amount of time that you put in your life to accumulate the resources to reach a certain standard of life that you want to achieve, because that makes you feel satisfied. That makes you feel like you've achieved something, which goes hand in hand with pride, right? You feel proud of your achievements.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually dial it down and you look at your actual necessities, you probably didn't have to accumulate that much wealth, maybe that many resources. And you could have spent that extra time accumulating those resources being of service of others.
Mm-hmm.
Some food for thought.
I have some thoughts on that, but I want to hear what Shadi thinks.
I don't know, man. Like, because greed, at what point are you happy, right? I think that's probably my set in stone spot. That can change over time, as in how big of a house I want, how many cars I want. But like, if we're dropping it down to the necessities, you just have to be able to eat, you have to be able to sleep, and you have to be able to do something, right? You have to do some type of work. That's the thought process I have. As far as the greed, you don't need multiple cars. You don't need the biggest house. I think it's all just depending on your happiness. And what you desire to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yeah, like there's too much to go into it. I think that there's so many different thoughts you can really put into it, and so many different questions you can add on. But I think in the end, it's your happiness and obviously being able to give back. Like, you don't want that excess amount.
Yeah. I think the premise I'm trying to set really is that there is no right or wrong answer, even though there is religious texts to those that believe in that, or people that believe in like palm readings or any stuff like that. There is no set in stone right path for anybody. But I think what really is important is to look internally and reflect upon yourselves as to what it is, as you kind of previously alluded to, why and what it is that you're trying to achieve and what the outcome of that is.
Mm-hmm.
And you made a good point in regards to where you're happy, right? Everybody's level of satisfaction or happiness is very different from one person to the other. But I think what's a really slippery slope is that we feel that when we attain something, we're going to be happy. And then we move the goalpost to the next thing, which again, you were kind of mentioning gluttony, which like we've been saying, it's all intertwined and it's all super complex. What may be right for one person may not be right for the other. But that also doesn't leave us in a place where we should cast judgment towards other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it goes back to that pride talk where we were talking about, right? Because the moment I think that you are living a greedy life, because I think that I need less to survive, and you should think the same way as me,
Yeah.
then I am partaking in that cardinal sin.
Yeah, you've also fallen, right? There's a very good reason why it says judge not lest you yourself be judged, right?
Correct.
I think where it gets interesting for me is the fact that even if we talk like King Solomon, for example, who wrote Proverbs, and was considered the richest and wisest man that ever lived. This man had bank. This man had bank. And the fact of the matter is that some of the most successful and well-written about people in the Bible were extremely wealthy, right? And so do we think that they just happened to chance upon that? Most of them, no. They worked extremely hard. They were very strategic with being stewards of what it is that God had provided them, right? And then they were able to attain significantly more. But then the question always is when you have achieved that, what is your next move?
Yeah.
Because if your next move is to move the goalpost and say, well, you know what? We have 5 houses so far. Let me guess 6. Let me guess 7. Again, what is the goal of that, right? Is it so that you're able to do more for the people that are important to you, that you're able to have a greater impact in society? For me personally, it's the latter for me. Even if we think about, let's say, rental properties. Yes, if you're a landlord who has like 10 properties, you could say, yeah, I have 10 houses. Or you could look at it like this. I'm actually providing shelter and a home for multiple families, right? I am ensuring that I will do the best that I can to, for example, not unfairly evict people or to not break leases, because that happened to me. I had to move on very short notice because this person decided that she couldn't afford her place anymore because she did not have the financial resources to do that. And that impacted me, right? And so the way that I've always seen it is that it simply allows you to do more. But the more you get, the more cautious we have to be, because that text that you quoted earlier was from a parable where Jesus was talking to, no, not quite a parable, actually. It was where Jesus was talking to this guy that they referred to as the rich young ruler, who came to Jesus and he was talking about how, oh yeah, like I want to be able to do what you do, or I want to be like you. And Jesus could already see that the problem for this specific person was that his wealth was going to get in the way. Which is why he told him, sell all your possessions and then follow me. And the next part of that verse talks about how the rich young ruler was dismayed and he left. And he was saddened because he was like, I wasn't ready to do that. But in that particular circumstance, his wealth was getting in the way. Whereas there are other people who Jesus did not tell them to do that, right? He just said, follow me. And that was it. And maybe as a result, they chose to sell their belongings. But I think that really where we need to be very cautious about in this whole pursuit of resources is what do we do after we've gotten that? And yeah, I like the way that you said it around happiness, right? The reason I've never been a fan of pursuing happiness is the fact that happiness is based on what happens, right? Whereas joy is an internal state that you choose for yourself. So for me, what I've always tried to pursue is joy, because happiness is based on what happens around you, right? And so you don't have as much control over that.
I kind of wanted to throw it back because I feel like you guys really talked about envy within the last conversation you brought up, like watching someone else's moves and being wary about someone else's financial status and all that. I don't know. That's another huge sin that you can't really dig too deep into, right? If you're watching somebody else's success, you should congratulate them. You should be happy for them, right?
Definitely.
That's something you don't want to linger on too much because if you're too busy watching someone else, then you're not doing anything yourself, right? So,
facts.
With that being said, with the whole greed thing, I think you can't be too worried about others in the sense of materialistic stuff, right? You should really genuinely just be focused on your own happiness and own joy. I like the way you put joy. That really puts in perspective of a sudden feeling, Happiness is a long-term thing, I think, that you really have to find later in life or hopefully sooner, right? But joy is an amazing way you put that. I really like that.
Nice.
I think it's actually interesting that you guys say that because I actually disagree with the joy and the happiness feeling. I don't think that people should chase. And I mean, I can see what you're saying about joy, which is almost like a state of mind, right?
It's a choice. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a choice. But I think that when we're, I don't even think reaching happiness is a thing, because most emotions and feelings are transient. They come and go, right? And I also believe that life isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be challenging. Life is meant to be hard. You're meant to endure hardships. Like that's what we're here for. And it's certainly getting harder and harder as we continue to age and the world continues to sort of go in the trajectory in which it's going. But I think in order for people to reach joy or to, in my opinion, to reach a state of inner peace, which is the way I like to see it, is that you've got to be able to accept the world for what it is. You've got to be able to accept yourself for how you are and the way that you exist in this world. And to also acknowledge that you may or may not achieve everything that you set yourself out to achieve, but you've got to find enjoyment in the challenges that you have to face in life.
I like that.
I was about to say, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
That sense of inner peace,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I would see that as genuine happiness.
Which is, yeah, that's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? Like, what is inner peace to you? Like, do you have an emotion that goes with it? Or
No, I think when I think of peace, I just think of quiet. I think of like, when you're out in camping and you hear the crickets, you hear the wind blowing, you're like connected with your environment in a way where you're grounded. Your thoughts aren't racing. You're not preoccupied with anything. And regardless of what it is that you're facing in life, fully knowing that you're in a situation that may be hard, but you're at peace with yourself, knowing that you may have some control over the outcomes in your life, but the likelihood that you have control over everything is not there, right? And so accepting that, and like I said, accepting the world for what it is, accepting yourself for how you exist in the world, and acknowledging that you may not achieve everything that you've set yourself out to do is how I've found peace myself. Because as much as I've tried to make my life as wonderful and happy as I've tried for many, many years, I've realized that I've become too fascinated with that feeling of like, because the way I see happiness, it's like, excitement, everybody's laughing, people are smiling. But maybe like how you see inner peace and like a different level of happiness, maybe that's kind of my happiness where I'm just like tranquil and just calm.
Yeah, I was about to say happiness is like that nice feeling of calm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like being able to go home and just not have anything else on your mind.
Yeah, like kiss your girlfriend, give her a hug, kiss your parents, have your dog greet you at the door, and just be happy that this is like the life that you have, no matter how bad or good it might be.
That's powerful because I think that it sums up really well why it is that these deadly sins are things that we really want to be proactive in checking in our lives. Because when we succumb to that, I feel like the pursuit of whatever it is that is drawing our focus away from the things that truly matter because we have succumbed to these, those are the things that ultimately rob us of that joy or happiness in the long run, right? And I really like, Uriel, what you said around the acceptance piece, because I believe that that is the antidote to almost all 7 of them, if not. Like, I'd have to think really thoroughly, but specifically in this conversation around pride and greed, being happy and accepting what it is that you have, right? The cards that you've been dealt, instead of trying to get the dealer to reshuffle, right? To look at the hand that you've been dealt and say, you know what? This may not be the greatest hand, but I'm going to roll with it, right? I'm going to find a way to make this work. Or when it comes to pride, right? To not want to continually seek that external validation so that you feel like you've done something. Because really, that's what I had to learn the hard way when I was really struggling with pride, is that I was simply trying to prove myself, right? I was trying to make it so that nobody could say that I was less than, because I had been made to feel less than in so many different areas and times of my life. And while that did help me, it was a buffer against, let's say, falling into depression. I'd say, like, especially in middle school and high school. But it was this false bravado that ultimately damaged relationships, because I think that that is the most deadly part about this whole conversation around all 7 of the sins, is that it damages not only the relationship you have with others, the relationship you have with God, if that's your belief, but most importantly, the relationship with yourself, right? that verse that we were talking about before we hit record here around what does it profit a man to gain the world but lose his soul? I love that verse so much because it really captures the essence of what is truly important here, right? The character and quality of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And Shadi, I know that for you, like these two ideas of like pride and greed have been like very prominent and powerful things in your life and that was why we wanted to talk about this. But you've been hiding something for us. You've been keeping something from us that I've been itching to see.
So take a look. Is the camera gonna be able to get it from that distance?
Yes, it will be. All right, the man went and did something dope, yo. He's about to show this off, yo.
Oh, that looks nice. That looks really nice.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
But yeah, so
It's healing up good too.
yeah.
Oh my. Yo, that's clean.
That looks so good.
All right,
So,
explain it. Tell us what it means to you.
So really, with that being said, as pride is the lion, because the lion's always the king of the jungle, right? He or she, whatever, is running the show. And I think that really is what is going to kill you one day, right? Because my thought process behind it is there's a skull with it, like the skeleton piece. And if you are, let's say, as pride is, let's say, arrogance. That's a beautiful word.
Mm-hmm.
Arrogance. That really is going to knock you down because there's always going to be someone smarter than you, stronger than you, faster, something.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be always one person or more that are going to be better than you in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And they're going to humble you like really quick. If you don't take in that information that, hey, you have to be down here and be nice, like a nice coast of just trying to work to success rather than that envy. So I feel like envy is so big to really cut into pride.
Yeah.
So to put that in end terms, you want to be focused on yourself, but in like a nice humble manner and be able to just take your strides.
Yeah.
You don't want to be cocky about anything, or you don't want to put other people down, right? As a leader of the jungle, you want to bring people up with you. But then also with that being said, you don't want to look for that recognition, right? That it comes. And with that being said, that's pride to me. Like the sense of arrogance, you have to cut that out or else it's going to really drop you down.
Those are some really good points. And while we're on that, actually, because you've shared that scripture there, there's another one that I was thinking about that I wrote down here. So it says, humble yourselves, because you were talking about humility. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you in due time. And so I find this really powerful because I'm going to just kind of preface what I'm trying to say with this. I think a lot of us that are religious tend to lean more on our faith when things in our life are not going well.
Facts.
We tend to pray more. You tend to maybe read your Bible or whatever scriptures. Maybe you go to church and suddenly you start seeking that help from, another spiritual being that you believe in. Sometimes people, meditate or, they wish things into the universe. Or sometimes people just maybe think luck, right? But when you were talking about humility, this kind of thought came down, and you're talking about being humbled in life. You're right. There's always going to be somebody better at anything than you. I think that's just a fact. But the really interesting point that I like to see it this way is that God will always have a way to humble us when we're choosing not to be humbled. And we can choose it as anything else, but that's just the way I like to see it. But it's so true because we as humans are so imperfect. And even when we're trying our best to be as good as we want and we possibly can, we are going to sin no matter what. And sometimes it doesn't have to be actual actions that we take, but we sin in our own thoughts and in our own hearts. And when you're talking about envy, which we'll go more in depth on a different episode, but that plays so true into pride, as you were talking about, but also greed. And so I want to read you guys just a short one again, another scripture that goes into greed, but connects with pride to bring it all kind of together. That it says, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, his female servant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that's your neighbor's. We don't have servants anymore. I think really what this is trying to bring to us is that a lot of us tend to partake in these cardinal sins in our minds and our hearts. I think a lot of people have done a really good job now of kind of hiding behind a mask and not showing their true intentions and like their true feelings about how they feel about themselves or other people. I think technology has made this far worse because a lot of people have pretend like they're egocentric. So they pretend to be maybe something that they want to be, but aren't actually. And so then you start running into this issue of what's the word I'm looking for? Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Thank you. You didn't even help me, but you helped me by looking at me.
I was about to say,
you got
there
me.
you go.
Thank
it was
you.
Telepathic communication. Yeah.
So imposter syndrome. And so then people then feel the need to put up this facade. And then internally, they are actually feeling very ashamed and embarrassed about who they actually are because they know they're not the person that they're trying to show the world they are. And so I think a lot of us are being humbled, like internally, right? And so it's so important for us to like really disconnect from that and understand like what is important in life. And we were talking about it earlier and you guys mentioned it is about having the opportunity to have these honest conversations with people and to be your true self, because we exist in a world where people are just choosing not to be authentic anymore. You sometimes go out and like people are wearing the same clothes, literally like same leggings, like, you know, same jackets, like it's crazy. We're all carbon copies of each other.
Isn't that nutty? Like the first time that is the trend, right? The first time that I ever saw that, I was like, man, there's like 3 or 4 people out here literally wearing the exact same outfit.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes me wonder, right? Like, and I think that this is a really great place to land is authenticity, right? Which has been like a critical piece of what we've been trying to cultivate in this space here. And part of why, Shadi, we wanted to definitely get you to come through for this like first episode of the new year, because ultimately speaking, we have sought to find more people like that, right? To understand that we can build a community of people who actually desire to be able to live authentically, to achieve that self-actualization, because iron sharpens iron, right?
I would say, like great minds think alike.
Amen.
Me and Uriel had a conversation about this pretty recently. Like searching for someone that has that is like-minded is so important to grow and someone to learn lessons from, right? So really like iron sharpens iron, right?
Amen to that, man. That's why we're going to have to get you to come back to make this a whole series. I feel like we just like barely scratched the surface like today, really like talking about this. And as we pointed out, it's all interconnected. For me, really what I got out of this, because naturally we saw that we kept trending towards pride, right? And I think that there is a reason why it's considered kind of the primordial sin, as you rightly said, right? Like in a theological perspective, like Lucifer, that was his original sin, right? And that's what led to the state of the world that we're in now. But I do believe that greed often is a lot more insidious, right? Because nobody wants to admit that they're greedy, right? I think most people who, let me speak for myself. When I was still really trying to work through pride, I had no issue admitting that I was prideful, right? And that this was something I was working on. But you don't ever hear people say I'm greedy. That's not something that people will ever admit. So I do think that it is a lot more insidious and it creeps up in ways that we often don't expect. And that's why it is as dangerous as it is. So we got to stand guard against it, lest it destroy our soul.
You know, it's funny that you say that, but I think it's because people that are prideful are actually celebrated. People celebrate other people's successes. So therefore, you don't feel ashamed or embarrassed of saying you're a prideful person.
That is a great point.
But ultimately, if you think about it, why I think the whole subject of pride kept coming back up. And again, just playing devil's advocate here. This whole channel and everything that we do is about creating authenticity and encouraging people to be authentic, but because we believe that to be the best way that a person can be. But that makes us egotistical and prideful because we believe that our beliefs are better than those of that other people currently hold. Now, we have good reasons to think that way. But again, when I was saying earlier, we don't have a book or a rule set that tells us what the right path is.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to bring it back again, like we've been saying to ourselves. What we know is good falls within our convictions, and we're trying our best to live a righteous life. We'll be all right.
Shadi, thanks for coming through, bro. I cannot wait to get you on for this next one, man. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing your point of view, bro.
Of course. I appreciate it so much. I'm happy to record with you guys whenever you guys want, right?
Oh, of course, bro. Trust me. Yeah, we're going to be knocking on your door real soon, yo. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Stay blessed.
And remember to continue to work towards creating a life worth living.